which is a film screening that we're very excited about. We're very happy to have Hara Kaminara with us today, and we will be screening her film, A Letter to Nikola. Hara is a audiovisual artist, audiovisual storyteller. She works with visual arts, film, and photography, looking at social themes. We're delighted to have her today. Hara will say a few words about her film, introducing the film. The film is 50 minutes long, we'll screen that, and then we'll have a lot of time for discussion, because the session goes until 5:30, so that should be less plenty of time for discussion. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Hara.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here and for screening the film. I won't say much because I think a lot is explained and said in the film. Just maybe briefly that yes, I am not an expert in anything. Just I want to share an experience I had. So coming from fine art studies and then going on to photojournalism, in 2017 I met some of the people working for SOS Mediterranee, which is an NGO, humanitarian organization that started in 2015 as different people, mostly humanitarians and people working in the marine industry, who decided to start this organization to take action against what is called the migration crisis. And so I joined their missions for about 3 months between 2017 and 2018. And so SOS Mediterranee, their main purpose is, of course, to save people, to rescue people at sea, but it's also to document and to share what's happening in the sea, far from anybody, in the middle of nowhere. So that was my role. I went on board the ship on the Aquarius. So at the time it was the Aquarius. As a photographer, to take pictures of the daily operations and of the life on board. So I think I'll stop here. You'll see the film. I think a lot of things are explained, and then we can talk about it. Thank you. Maybe do you want me to start? Please start. Of course. Okay, so maybe I can just start by saying that, so when I was on the ship, I didn't have the intention of making a film. It's actually, I had worked with film and doing videos in the context of artistic projects, but I had never made a film with a beginning and an end. But so as I say there, and I speak a lot, but I'll go to this after. So when I finished, when I did this last trip, I realized I was pregnant, and so I knew I was not going to go back. And I had all this footage of people singing and praying and dancing, and for me that was something extremely powerful, because all these images of sinking boats and people on boats, it was things that I had seen before, and I was, even though it's one thing of seeing a picture and another thing of seeing the actual thing happening in front of you, but I was, yeah, these images were kind of familiar, but the power that life took, let's say, through the music was something incredible, and it was both extremely sad and extremely joyful, and there was hope, and there was grief, and it was like it summarized kind of humanity in a way. So I had a lot of footage of this singing, and my first idea, my first reaction was to do an edit, but where I not going to say anything, just have all this music, one after the other, of the rescued people, of the rescuers, it's like the whole thing. And so that's what I did, and for me it was very, every time I saw that it was very emotional, but I realized I showed that to a few people around me and some friends, and anyway, and somebody came and told me, well, if people are singing and are dancing, it means that things are not so bad. And so then it took me about 3 years to explain to this person that things are bad, and that's why, and I started actually talking in the first person. It didn't come at first. I really didn't want to appear. In the end, I speak for the whole time, and I'm sorry. But it was just to explain my position, and I also felt that I cannot speak about others and show images of others if I don't explain who am I and why. And so
And that's very useful, because what is it okay if I? Yeah. One of the questions I had was about, positionality has come up a lot, right? Some of the other speakers have talked about it as well, and clearly that's something you're sort of processing. And so I guess I wanted to ask you why you adopted this sort of narrative format of a letter to your son. I mean, to me, that adds sort of beauty and hope and all of that. And then also motherhood kept coming up. Like, there are a number of times when you talk about thinking of yourself as a child, or being in your mother's belly, or the migrant women giving birth on the boat. And so and in terms of positionality, like what does that camera mean to you? Because there's a very moving moment that you talk about the man on the boat and not being able to film him, right? But it's your medium, right? Sorry, I'm just processing. There's so much in the film. It's so beautiful. But to me, those are connected. Like, your choice of the format of the letter to your son, your unborn child at the time, and then you're processing your own positionality and your relationship with the medium. If you could talk about any of that.
What should I start from? It became a letter to Nikola. It was, so as I said earlier, I in the beginning I didn't want to appear. I definitely didn't want to be hurt, but it took me a very long time to find a way to talk about this story. And as I was saying, it was very important for me more and more to explain my position, and talking, like finding this form of creating this audiovisual letter to Nikola. It was actually a friend who suggested to me to do this as an exercise, or I was trying to find a way to say this story, and she said, but try to write and try to film. Actually, it was this: try to film something and talk about, if you had to say to your son, what would you say? And once I started doing this, I realized that it was actually a good medium in order to talk about this. But then I had to talk about my position, and all this was happening while I was slowly becoming a mother, and then so these questions became one. Yeah, they were very interconnected, and about you said about my position to the camera. So it was something that was always like it's a big question. I don't have answers. Basically, I have much less answers as time goes than. I used to do before all this happened, some time before, I used to do a big project called Crisis, which was, I was at that time studying in the UK, and the Greek crisis happened in Greece, and it was all about how a crisis, how a situation, a political, social situation is mediatized and shown in the media and all of that. And my relationship to the camera is also very ambiguous, but when I was on the ship, I remember that we did the first rescue, so during the rescue there was a lot of adrenaline, and I was just there trying to focus and sit in my position and photograph and all of that. And once the rescue finished, people came on board, and then there was another ship that was going into Sicily, so we disembarked these people in the other ship. Anyway, and at that moment, I just felt all my emotions going, and I started crying, and it was very difficult for me to just process everything. And somebody from the crew came and told me, like, gave me a hug and everything, and then they said, if you cannot cope, you should leave, because we don't have the time to, like, here it's, we don't have the time, we don't have the luxury of that. And this stuck with me, and the whole time there I was thinking, and he was right, like, I was there to witness, and to witness is to take pictures. But it was very difficult to, something else happened, like, and that's why also I found all this situation with filming people singing, it was very profound, because actually people, once they came on board, they saw me, they didn't see me, but they saw the camera as a way to testify that they're still alive, or as a way to communicate messages, or to testify, or I don't know, keep trace of their existence and their survival at that moment. And so sometimes they would look at the camera and they would speak to the camera as if it was their mother. Very rarely speak. Normally it was through music. So they would sing, or they would say poems, or they would, in some musical form, communicate either to their parents or to, like, to God, to whatever. They would testify their stories or their hopes. So it became somehow like I was just in there. I was in between the camera and people trying to witness, to testify about their experience. So yeah, all this was became kind of one, as you said, interconnected.
Tension between witnessing and documenting.
Yeah.
And how you...
And then what you do with all of this. What you do, and yeah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It was very intense, and now about emotions and affective practices also in the boat, but also between you and the people in the boat. So exactly for this that you were saying, your last statement, I was thinking if you had the chances to share the documentary with some of the people who were on board and what they told you, if they felt as represented. Thank you.
So the people on the boat, I did not show. I showed to other people that had done similar crossings, and it was actually, I was very I was very anxious to know, like, if what they feel about this, and if they feel represented, or if they feel whatever, like. And it was very touching. It was mostly people that had crossed through land, and they were talking about how these feelings of being in between worlds and in between places, but at the same time nowhere, and how this echoed them. And like I could see that the rhythms and the music also echoed with their culture, and it was a very powerful meeting, very powerful to share this with them. And so for the moment, I started working on this film for many years. I was just doing it alone at night because it was COVID and it was quite difficult. And then I found the producers. So now we have organized many screenings, but the idea is to eventually to put it online. And, I mean, it's done to be shared. And,
Questions, comments, remarks, jokes, wake up? Sigolene, I think you have something.
No, nothing to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. This was a very beautiful film. I'm curious to hear more about how you decide what to share in terms of respecting the people who are going through a tragedy and the line between wanting to tell their story but also giving them space to grieve and process.
Yeah. So yeah, that was also. Thank you for your question, and it was part. I think that's why it took me so many years to do it, and I could continue. I could have been continuing to find a way to edit it, but at some point I thought it was an emergency to show what I was doing and what I saw, because I thought that it was part of the moment, even though unfortunately now, so many years after, it's still part of the world we are living in. But yeah, so I had part of my work on the book was also to collect testimony. So people that wanted to talk about their stories, they would, if they wanted, they could come, and I was recording or filming, or it was different testimonies of the individual trajectories that they had done. And so in the beginning I was thinking to add some of those testimonies, but then I realized, then I realized that actually by putting those, I mean, I've added the little boy who talks about his sea journey, but by putting interviews and testimonies of the journeys of other people that talked about what happened before, talked about the concentration and the tortures in Libya, or about crossing the desert and all of that, it actually kind of not summarized, but how can I say, it would make like, it's about individual stories, and somebody said it earlier, every person has their own story and their own reason and their own trajectory, and it's very unique. And by putting these testimonies, it kind of summarized like the whole story with personify. I don't know how to say. The whole story into one person, and this is, I didn't want to do that, and really like my main objective and my main wish was to share the music, because really for me the music spoke about everything. It was like still thinking about it was the most powerful thing. It summarized all the death, all the horror, and all the life. And so everything that I have done around all this endless me talking, it's just to justify and to put this music. And I thought that this spoke better than anything else. I remember, for example, once we would do, how do you say this? At night we had shifts, and we all stayed for some time on deck, and then we would speak with the different people, and one of them came and told me, we were talking, and he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm from Greece." And I remember him saying that my dream is to, if I succeed, to go to the... First of all, he said, "I'm so sorry about what's happening in your country." And I was like, how is it possible that through all of this, and he said, "I hope that I manage one day to go to England, and I'm going to study economics, and maybe I can come and help Greece." And it was just, I am stuck with this phrase and this, So anyway, so stories like that I'm going to stop. But I found that it was talking about these types of anecdotes and about people, somehow also narrow it down and summarize like the whole. It became it wasn't true.
No, I wasn't meaning to tell you stop. There are more questions. First of all, thank you so much for this film, and I find it important on many levels to educate. And no wonder that it's a letter to your son. We need to pass this message. People need to be aware. People need to be informed. But at the same time, I do believe that language dies sometimes, and we cannot verbalize an experience, or we cannot describe, and who we are to talk about the feelings of these refugees or migrants, or the pain or the suffering they went through the journey. And even you try to capture it by the camera, it's gonna take them a while to process it. I don't know if it has to do because I work on it or not, and I became obsessed with it. I would like you, if you don't mind, to speak a little bit when you rescue them and they are cold and they wrap themselves with this golden aluminium and the blanket. The first time I saw the image, I thought they were dead, not asleep, in the boat. Yeah. When you were, if you could just talk about like how do you capture it, how they sleep, like there was no blank or empty surface.
So that the specific image that you're talking about, it was actually, so it's the Mediterranean Sea. Sometimes it's very calm. Like the first rescue we did, the sea was completely flat. I showed it to a person and they were saying, but it is a cinema set because it looked like a swimming pool. But other times that the sea is very rough, and that specific footage you saw, it's actually there was a specific place on the Aquarius where it was covered, because the thing is that the boat, okay, it was 60, I think 5 or 70 meters long, but it cannot accommodate all these people. There were hundreds of people to have them inside. So the whole organization of the ship is that the women and the children, they have a specific space inside, and the men sleep outside, so they can separate them. And so that specific night, there was a very, very big storm. So there was water coming from all over the place. So that's why they were all together in a specific space where it was kind of protected from the water, and that's why it's like this. And the light, the red light, it was like at night on ships you cannot not have light because of security reasons and in case somebody falls in. But there was this red light, which is a very this image is very bizarre and.
Thank you for a very moving film and the film that It's a lot of very interesting issues and also obviously a very personal film. What I was interested in was the way in which you used the child, your own child, and children you talked about, newborns. And the reason is, in a sense, I was wondering if that's because there is not the pollution yet. If you like, the pollution of images, the pollution of ideas, the pollution of the awful kind of ways in which the world is towards refugees. So in a sense, was that why it became a letter to Nikola, or your daughter? Because of trying to move away from the kind of accepted ways in which to look at this, to try and actually, or you having to explain it because it is so extreme. And I suppose the corollary is that when you talk about the umbilical cord and the newborn, that and this is a historical corollary, that Africans talk about those babies who died or were thrown into the ocean during the slave trade, that they became, they set up a kind of living, breathing aquatopia, and they call this Drexia. So there is a sense in which that moment of birth in this space, although it's awful and there are loads of awful things about it, it's also a moment where there's a new space. So I just wanted you to maybe talk to that, or tell me I'm barking up the wrong tree. But I was just thinking that might be the way that this becomes something that you can explain or can have a discourse for. Because I think Yona is right. Where is the way we can talk about this? But maybe the way we can talk about this is because we need to explain it to our children. And we need to explain it in terms of the children who are being born in this canal in the Mediterranean.
Yes, so thank you for your comments and questions. It's very rich. I guess when I started going through this path, it was not because I had some very dialectical or it wasn't because I had read a lot of things about motherhood. I was actually completely lost. It was from a very personal place that I was, I was not only about what I had experienced, but what was going through me and what I was trying to see in the future and everything. It was just blank. It was a very difficult moment. But what you say, that I kept coming back into these ideas of the womb and the sea and the fact that there was so many deaths, but there was also life, and it comes back to the music. Like again, it was the same in the music. It was so dark and horrific and horrible, but there was also so much light and hope. And I think. So I started with this exercise first to try to find a way to say the story, and I started using the baby, and then the baby I realized it was going to be Nikola, and then Nikola was born, and then at some point, time had starting passing, and then I felt horrible because I felt, then what if I'm by doing this film, by taking this path to say the story in this way, what if my son then feels that the whole responsibility, the whole horror of the world is on his back? And I hope he does.
Thank you, and a remark. Thank you for your positioning in the film. That's very much inspiring. Yeah, that's confirming some things I wanted to do. Another project that I see. Yeah, because it was also related to motherhood. So yeah, because it's so hard to position oneself. So that's, I can understand. And the remark, I was connecting with your paper, and I was thinking about this PUM, that, these international brigades during the Civil War in Spain. And I don't know, I was connecting with SOS Méditerranée, and I was connecting with Flotilla, and I was thinking this kind of spontaneous international operational structures. Yeah, not bureaucratic.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. It really hits you in a great way. Yes, so what I was thinking actually touches on what Elsa just said. But the thing that is sort of like turning over in my head is the transformational process of becoming a mother and how unsettling that was. And the way you spoke about that was so honest and yeah, like I think that resonates probably with many of us who have gone through that. It's just unsettling. But then also the border as a space of transformation, a physical transformation, but also a metaphysical one. That yeah, I think when you pass through and face death, right, the joy on the other side of that is tremendous. Not to say that there is also many things that then remain unresolved or unsettling. But I think this has so much potential to connect with people that are seeing people who cross borders in different ways as different. And it's such a great way to share migration as a social process as well, a social phenomenon, you know, like motherhood, like other things. And yeah, that it was just, it felt very intimate and beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Thomas, je suis ici.
Yeah, thank you very much. My question doesn't relate to your film directly, but to SOS Méditerranée. So you use this film. I was also thinking about Murmure de la Mer, the novel which has been around SOS Méditerranée. So there is around the Aquarius and civilization a series of artistic production. And so I was wondering whether it was part of communication strategy. Is it something you talk about? How are the projects selected? Well, can you let us know about the backstage machine?
So I went on the SOS Méditerranée, puts a lot of energy in showing what they're doing, in telling about the stories from the sea and all of that. So Murmure de la Mer, for those who don't know, it's a comic, right? Hippolyte, I think, is the person who did it, and it's a comics that is about their work and about rescues. So as I was saying earlier, my first reaction when I finished the work, my last trip with them, was to do this thing with the songs. And then it took me a lot of time, but I, somewhere intentionally, I didn't want to. That's why in the film it doesn't say anywhere SOS Méditerranée, except in the end where it says the number of rescues. But I didn't want to make a kind of promotional film or a film that explains neither the situation in the sea or the why people live, because I have some ideas, but I don't know, and neither to promote SOS Méditerranée, because I didn't want to do that. So I think they have a lot of different ways that they work, and I think there's been a film recently that even is in French national television right now, which is about sorry. Yes, I heard it. Yeah, exactly. I didn't see it. I started it, but I didn't see it. Yeah, exactly. But this film, at some point I told them, listen, I'm working on a project, but for a long time I didn't have a producer. I was just working alone during COVID when the kid was sleeping at night in front of my computer, so I didn't, so that was another, it was showing it, another important moment for me was to show it, obviously, first of all, to people that had been through this this journey, and then also to people that work on the ship, because they had a set of maps and they hadn't seen. And so, yeah.
So did you show it to refugees, immigrants, people who work?
Yeah, I have done a lot of projection. People, the film is going to different places. So I have, and it's been very interesting. This is what I was saying, like about equity.
Just to clarify, were you ended up at SOS Mediterranee as an activist participating, or were you hired as a photographer?
Yeah, I was. So SOS Mediterranee now they have Ocean Viking. Before it was the Aquarius, and I think they do the same thing now. They have the rescue team. They have. When I went, they were working with MSF, Médecins Sans Frontières, so they are in charge of the medical. As soon as people are on board, they are in charge of the medical element. And part of the rescue team of SOS Mediterranee is to have a photographer that takes pictures on board. And except of this photographer, which was my role for the 3 months I was there, they also invite external journalists, like from all over the media. So when I was there, I was part of the rescue team to document the operations. And normally it stops there. It actually did stop there. So this film, and I'm sure that they work with many artists. Like now in Marseille there's a huge mural, and there's been a lot of different actions, and they put a lot of energy into trying to talk about their work and all of that. But specifically this film, it was a bit differently because I just did it and showed it to them in the end.
And they allowed you to use because you were on a profession, on a job taking these photos, and they gave you the permission to use the images.
Yes.
See, please.
I noticed as your credits going up, the film is
Speak to the microphone.
It is put out through Derive. And I like actually the fact that Derive is a wandering about on one point, and a point of stability in a boat with opposite complementary notions of Derive. But we work with your colleagues, Gail, on another film called The Burn. And I see this as being a companion piece, if you like, but from a very different perspective.
Which film was that?
Call it Burning. But it's made in a very different way, from a different perspective, different techniques. But I just wanted collectively as Derive how much you work together in framing how your final film is made.
Thank you, and it's really touches me that you know these people because they're very important and special for me. So when I was saying...
Can you say a few words about the film you mentioned, because we are not familiar with.
So in Brussels there is two women, Mary Jimenez and Benedict Guienard, and they have made, they do collectively films, very, very important and beautiful films that combine a documentary, let's say, aspect and a fictional aspect. And they have done films about very different subjects, and they did this film called, call it The Burning in English, I think, On la nomme La Brûlure. So it's a film that I wanted, it kept coming in my mind because it's a film that they actually went to Tunisia and found mothers of people that mothers that had lost their sons mostly at the sea, and made a very beautiful film about this. And it also became an installation, and it's a very and actually, when I was saying that I have a friend that suggested to me to try and make a letter, it's Mary. And they have it's two people that I admire and I love extremely, and I'm very happy that they're
We have a question here. Yeah.
Hi, Hi, so mine's not a question, but I just wanted to take a second to voice this, that, so I'm an art history major here at ACM, and artwork that is like yours, like this film where you have honored these specific narratives of individual people and their hope and their desperation, and stitched it with documenting your own vulnerability, I think just achieves, I don't know, this like reminding us of our humanity. And I think that that's the whole reason that I'm in this discipline, is to study art like yours. So thank you.
One last question. Do you feel you have something?
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your film with us. It was beautiful. I was just wondering if you could speak more to the sort of transition that you went through during this filming process of being hired sort of as a documenter, and also being, you mentioned previously in one of the answers that you were giving that you were meant to be an observer. And so moving from a documentarian to an observer to almost a confessional piece for these people on board to then being a filmmaker.
Speak to the mic.
I tried, but it's not working.
I'll give you mine. It was off.
So yeah, I think so. As you say, it's 3, 4. I don't know how many categories, very separate. But in the end, it becomes one. And I guess in different stages, it was different things that echoed to me. But all these questions and all these positions are constantly there. And maybe trying to making such a personal film, which even now I hear about it and I'm like, just stop talking for a moment. But it's to try to find a way to say stories in a way that combines all these elements, and to actually bring forward the questions and not try to answer. So I don't know if this is
Thank you, Hara. Thank you, Bidisha. Thank you all. It was a wonderful day, and see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.